Greetings, pipe pals and gals. The old holy smoking pipe padre coming back at you. June 5th, in the year of our Lord, 2025. Hey, wasn't there a song in the year 2025? Anyway. Okay. So I've been smoking. I am smoking. I think it's my Philip Rivera, along with some Hell of the Wind, Rat Trays blend. This was like 15 years old, and I opened it up about 2 months ago, and it's still tender and fresh and delicious, and I love it. Good. And I'm doing something a little different. Normally I drink coffee with my pipe, a little libation here, and this is just tart cherry juice with a little splash of lemon, and I think it kind of pairs well with the pipe. Okie dokie. Let's see here. Okay. Kind of trying to get this a certain look. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Got the teal and the cyan. Teal. Where is it at there? Right back there, teal, and the cyan over here. Yeah, okay, right there. Okay. Kind of classic YouTube video colors. You see a lot of people using these special lights. These are Amaran, I guess, lights. And to just kind of get some accents. And I even have some green lights over there. Okay. So, how y'all doing? So, I've been wanting to make a video for probably the last 2 weeks. I think we all have. I think a lot of you saw the video I did on the new Holy Father, Pope Leo the 14th, and so he continues to, I think, make some positive. He's making positive. Here's the thing. I got to get in a special frame of mind because I got a lot of things going on in my head right now. Sometimes I just like to just sit and be quiet and just try and taste the tobacco. And that's one of the reasons why so many of us choose to smoke a pipe, is because it kind of gives us maybe the ability to kind of slow things down. Kind of, maybe you can put things on pause for a little bit. Yeah, so anyway, this week I've been taking a little bit of time off. And, but sort of, kind of, there's always work to be done. And little things, people have problems, and, I'm still here. Went down to, we have a priest retreat this time of year, and I go and make a cameo appearance. And say hello to the bishop and a few of my priest acquaintances. This past year, a couple of the more notable priests passed away that I remember as a young seminarian and a young priest myself. Just kind of feeling that empty chair syndrome. I gotta get a little bit of juice here. And knowing that each of these men lived a full life and made, I would say probably significant contributions to their local communities for sure. And tomorrow, in fact, is my anniversary. And I guess that's why I'm a little more pensive, I guess, at this moment in making this video. But like I said, I've been wanting to make a video for the last couple weeks. I'm going to maybe just tilt that a bit. Does that look a little bit better? I guess so. I don't know. But so, there's a lot of things that are going on, in my personal life and, just life in general. Apparently, one of the things that I've heard just as of today, I guess, and it's always sad when this happens, but I guess it's just human nature. And I know some people probably that are more progressive and consider themselves liberals or Democrats or socialists or communists, whatever. They probably are, filled with a lot of glee that I guess apparently Pope. There's a slip. President Trump and Elon Musk have had a falling out. Again, I'm not 100% sure why there's a falling out. I'm going to move that microphone just a little bit closer there. Hopefully that works a little bit better. I'm trying just kind of a very basic, simple setup with this Shure 55 mic. And I'm just using an old device that I hardly ever used. It was in the package for probably decades. Oh, look at that. I guess it even lights up. It's called an Icicle. It's a Bluetooth. Was it blue snow or snowball or anyway, wait a minute, it should tell me on here what this is. Hold on a second. I've got blue microphones, or anyway, they're blue, and there we go. It's called Icicle, and it basically takes an XLR mic and adapts it straight into your iOS device. So normally I use another device, and I think sometimes I don't know if I've ever figured out how to use it correctly, and some people say, well, one channel was out and the other channel wasn't, and anyway, so, and then sometimes I try to do two mics and do the stereo thing, and sometimes it's just a little bit more work than I want to do, because I'm a lazy guy sometimes. I'm here on vacation. I call it a staycation mostly, and if it's an emergency, I've had a couple of people who wanted to, they wanted to come to confession. I'm never going to tell anybody no to that unless I'm in the hospital and I can't really hear their confession, but if I'm here, that's not a problem for me. But we get a lot of solicitation, on the phone, and you'll see a number, just it's a number, or it's a company, and I try to answer the phone most of the time. So I was sitting in my chair and the phone rings and I go, I better get that. And I'm going, wait a minute, doggone it, I'm on vacation. Now if it's a true emergency, they'll patch right through to my personal line, and if it's a hospital call, or again, somebody really needs me as a priest, I'm not going to say, well, I'm on vacation or it's my day off. I rarely ever do that. I don't even tell people that kind of stuff. I feel that it's kind of a real put off, and you're trying to say, well, you're bothering me, go away. I'd rather just tell somebody, hey, I'm sorry, I just don't have time right now. Or, there's been a couple of times where I really don't have the time because I'm going to another meeting, or I'm like, okay, for example, somebody called and they wanted me to do a graveside. And they said, yeah, we want you to do it at 10 o'clock. And I said, sorry, I'm going to be saying Mass at 10 o'clock. And there was a bit of an awkward pause there, like, well, aren't you going to come? Aren't you going to? But isn't our graveside more important than saying Mass? No, it's not. The most important thing that I do next to hearing confessions and anointing people is saying Mass. Actually, I would say that's the priority. Saying Mass, hearing confessions, and anointing people, okay? Probably pretty much in that order. And but some people, they kind of expect you as a priest to kind of be more congenial and conciliatory and accommodating, And I'd say 75% of the time, I try to accommodate people where I can. But when I can't, it's really sad. Now, I remember this bitter lesson the very first month I was a priest. I mean, it just tore me up. The little Irish pastor that I had, he, after I got to the parish, a week later, he goes, "Oh, by the way, now I'm going back to Ireland, I said, oh, really? And I who's going to be in charge? And he goes, "You are." And I was just newly ordained, I didn't know anything. So, but I thought, all right, it's hopefully the world won't come to an end while he's away, and things will be okay. Things are going to be okay. So it was in between we had like 3 morning masses. I think we had like a 7 a.m., a 9 a.m., and 11 a.m. And it was right between the 7, and I was getting ready for the 9. I'm walking around just kind of recollecting my thoughts, kind of rehearsing my homily, kind of ironing out some of the awkward little things that I say. Sometimes I realize that I'm kind of like, I don't always have a very clear segue into the next thought. I sometimes jump sometimes right in the middle of that thought, And people go, they kind of figure it out later. Go, "Oh, okay, I know where he's at." But sometimes it's a bit awkward. And I'm aware of that. And so sometimes I try to say, well, I could say that a little bit more in a better way. I could say things maybe makes a little bit more sense where they can, follow it logically, instead of just, kind of like, warp speed. Here I am at this other new thought and idea. So anyway, I'm walking around the church, and this really beautiful young girl, probably maybe 19, maybe not even 19, comes up to me and she goes, "Oh, Father, I'm so glad I found you." I'm going, okay. It's kind of nice when people say they're glad they found me. And but she says, "My grandmother's dying over at North Bay Hospital, and I need you to come right now and anoint her." And it was probably maybe 8:30, and I said, "Well, I'm really sorry about your grandma." I said, "But I got Mass at 9 o'clock, and it's like 8:37 now." I said, "So I've got to get ready for the Mass. But as soon as I'm done with the Masses, I'll be glad to go and anoint your grandma." And she goes, No, you don't understand. She's dying like right now. You've got to come now." And I said, "But I said, I can't." "Well, why?" I said, "Because I got to say Mass in another 20 minutes. "Well, what's so important about that?" And I understand she was scared, and she was fearful, and she was upset, and she was, very emotional. But, it's like, well, wait a minute, it's like, the priority is to say the Mass for the people first, and, offer worship to God, that's the most important thing. And then as soon as I'm done with those obligations, then I'll be more than happy to come and anoint your grandmother. But anyway, she walked off really angry and hurt. And it was really upsetting to me because I was like, I wanted to go, and I would have gone if I didn't have to say the Mass. See, I was all by myself. See, normally in a parish, when you got 2 padres, you kind of alternate. One will take that early Mass, and then the next guy will take the next one, and then you kind of do that kind of thing. You work out a schedule, But when you're all by yourself, you kind of have to do them all, So, but you let people down, probably more than you would like to, But unfortunately, that's just the way it is. I'm sure, doctors probably experience something similar. If you're an ER doc, and you've got multiple car accidents, coming in pretty much at the same time, you have to triage, and you have to say, well, I've got to, basically take care of the most important thing first, and then, work your way down. So, But anyway, so it was sad, and I never saw that little gal again, and I sure hope that somebody was able to go and anoint her grandmother. Maybe we had two parishes in the city at the time, and I'm hoping that maybe somebody from the other parish was able to help minister to her. But yeah. So anyway, yeah. So today's I'm doing a little vacation. Tomorrow's my 33rd ordination anniversary, June 6th, and so sometimes I do get a bit reflective, as I said earlier, kind of pensive, and I wouldn't say melancholy, but you just get a chance to kind of take a break and kind of reflect back on all that's come before, all that's gone before. Lots of experiences, many of them good, some of them not so good. Gotta get a little sip of this here. So, and just trying to kind of figure out, if I ever can, figure out, exactly what did I get myself into, so many years ago. So, yeah, I think will it be 40 years next year? 86 was when I officially became a Catholic. So, yeah, that's a good chunk of time. And I certainly have had, I've had my share of battles, have my share of failures and defeats. I've had some victories from, but, successes, I guess. I mean, it's just, oh man, I get kind of tired. Oh, sometimes, oh man. And, I just kind of, after a while, you just feel like it's like the never-ending Rubik's Cube. You kind of think, well, maybe I got this figured out now. And then it changes, I mean, let's face it, everything changed, a month ago? So Pope Francis died, was it the first of, was it the end of, when he died? Okay, that's right. He died the day after Easter Monday. And I think that was like the 21st of March. This is 21st of April. Sorry, 21st of April. And then we had the conclave a couple weeks later, and then Pope Leo came out May 5th, 4th, 3rd, I can't remember now. But again, just kind of, those are, and this is the thing. Obviously, I didn't know Pope Francis. I never met him. I think the closest I came to meeting a pope was when Pope John Paul II came to Candlestick Park in 87, summer or September of 87. I had just gotten in the seminary. And some of the seminarians in our seminary were tasked to be like the mitre bearer and the crozier bearer, and and be like the papal altar boys. I guess that's the best, And so I wasn't one of those, which was fine. I mean, I was just kind of just happy that I was there, and but I could say that some of the guys were kind of jealous that they didn't get picked to be, get to meet the Pope and all that. And I mean, if they had told me, would you like to meet the Pope? I mean, I would have been like icing on the cake. I don't even know what I would have done. I probably would have been dumbfounded. It's like, me? Meet the Pope? Little old me? I mean, I'm just like kind of like a Forrest Gump kind of a guy, But just kind of looking at all that has transpired, now again, I started seminary in 87. So that was almost, 2 more years. That'll be 40 years ago. So it's been, I've had a lot of interesting life experiences as a Padre. I mean, I was fortunate to be able to go back on active duty, and I was grateful for that. I became a prison chaplain after that, and that was a good experience. I mean, I was talking to somebody, was it yesterday or today? I can't remember. Yeah, I guess it was when I was on the priest retreat on Tuesday, and we were just talking about assignments, and I said, come to think of it, I've never had a bad assignment. Now, some people would look at, the places that I've been, and they would say, oh man, that must have been tough duty. That must have been a hard assignment. Being in the military, being deployed in the military, into Bosnia and everything, and living in these little sea huts. I mean, that, to me, if you've ever really been in the field, like in the Marines, and you're really sleeping on the ground. And if you're lucky to have a gas mask, that might be your pillow. You were lucky if you had that. Waking up with bugs crawling all around you and all that stuff. I mean, some of those things were kind of, didn't like that. But when I stop and think about it, I don't have any regrets about any of the places that I've been at as a Padre. And I know that some guys aren't. Maybe again, maybe I'm lucky. Maybe I was just lucky. Okay. There are some guys that just you listen to them. They'll tell you the assignment they'll tell you that one assignment that they had that they hated. They absolutely hated. It was the worst thing in their life. I really can't say that. Now I've had individuals who made maybe part of the experience very distasteful, and I kind of have a bad taste in my mouth about certain individuals that kind of might have, if they hadn't been there, would have made the experience even better. But all in all, it was still a good experience despite the presence of some, nefarious individuals. And I don't harbor a lot of resentments or bitterness at all. I just say, well, because a lot of times I try to look at it and say, well, what's my part in this? I always try to do that first. And sometimes if I'm honest, I'll say, well, I shouldn't have said thus and such. I kind of precipitated all of maybe the negative stuff that they were coming back at me with if I hadn't maybe said something the way I said it, and maybe overreacted when I didn't even need to do anything. So anyway, but honestly, maybe some people would think, oh, you're just lying, you're minimizing, you're disassociating, whatever. You've had this horrible life as a priest, right? And, I'd honestly say, no, I've had a much blessed life as a priest. For every one person that was, that negative person, I'd say there were probably maybe 20 great people that made the experience better. That one person might have been, kind of had it out for me, mostly like a superior person. I've had 2 of those, I think, in my, there were, and even then I knew that I was, it sounds arrogant. I knew that I was right and that they had an agenda and that they were just trying to flex their power and make my life miserable, but kind of ignored them in the end. And it was like, well, and maybe they were able to pull some rank on me in the military or in the prison system and make my life a bit uncomfortable, no doubt about that. But it turned out that it was for the better. It's like, okay, they kind of were like catalysts to make me stop and really evaluate, do I want to keep going down this particular road in my vocation, or do I need to make a change? And usually the change was for the better. Every time I would level up to the next assignment, it got better. So again, yes, I've been blessed, no doubt about it. but again, I think, I guess it's sort of like when I was in the basic courses in the military, learning how to read a map, and, I'll never forget, I was at Fort Lewis, Washington when I was going through my ROTC experience, and we were going through land nav and everything, and I'd learned a little bit about land navigation and how to read compasses and things like that. Wasn't the greatest at it, but I had a working knowledge of it for the most part, and sometimes you can really overthink things. You can complicate them when they don't need to be. And one of my little life experiences, which kind of serves as not just land navigation or map reading, and it kind of has a practical application to just daily life. And so we were on this course, and I was confident I would pass the course. I just wasn't sure if I was going to ace it, but I wasn't afraid of being lost, but I just knew that it was going to be a challenge, and it was. So this one, we were plotting our maps, and so I'm sitting underneath this tree, and this, I guess he was like a tactical officer, kind of helping the cadets, okay, you sure you got this now, And he was like a light colonel, and I'll never forget, he just had this interesting look in his eye, like, how you doing there, son? And going, oh, fine, sir, And he goes, so, do you know how to read a map? It's like, yeah, that's what we're here for, is land navigation, to read a map. He goes, no, I mean, do you know how to read a map? And I'm like, okay, he's communicating something that's a little bit more subtext. And I said, well, sir, isn't that why we're here, to learn? He goes, son, do you know how to read a city map? And I said, yeah, of course I know how to read a city map. And he goes, why don't you do me a favor and look down at your map, it's a terrain map, and just tell me what you see because he goes, oh, I see you plotted all your plots. He goes, they look right, but just tell me what you see. And I'm like trying to, I'm supposed to like see the mountain through the trees or the lake beyond the forest. I'm trying to make it really complicated. You're overcomplicating it. Just look at the map and tell me what you see. And all of a sudden it, bing! It was funny too, because it was like one of these winky things. And he goes, what do you see? And I said, well, sir, it looks like all those plots are on, they're all on roads. And you know how to read a city map, don't you, son? I go, yes, sir, I do. So I wouldn't say I cheated, but it's like, oh, the penny dropped. Okay, so I knew that I was looking for a road or an intersection or a T section or whatever, because that's where the plot was on my map. They were all on these little dirt, unimproved road surfaces. And I just went, oh, yeah, I'm making it more complicated than I need to, because I think he saw me stressing out, and I'm trying to get this like 30,000-foot view of, I've got to, see all these little contour lines on the, the mountains and everything. And it was just like super simple. He goes, you plotted all your points and they look correct, but tell me what you see on those points. And it was like, oh gosh, yeah, city map, roads, streets, that kind of thing, intersections. Got it. So anyway. But that was a good life lesson, because sometimes we overcomplicate a lot of things. I know I have, and I know I have a tendency to do that. And I just more and more I kind of study people. Sometimes I like to study people. And, and sometimes you don't have to really, especially if you're at loggerheads with people, you don't have to like go for the jugular all the time. You don't have to always be like in attack mode. You can actually just be a little more what Socratic, I guess, and ask questions of the other person and see what they know and what they're all about. I've been watching this documentary, and some of you may have heard of it, maybe you've heard of this. It was a very famous, recent famous criminal case called The Staircase. Michael Peterson was this guy who apparently he was convicted of murdering his wife, bludgeoning his wife. And it's like a 12-hour documentary. And I think I've sat through it now 3 times. And every time I sit through it, I learn something new. And I was just telling a friend the other day, I said, I really like, they're the 2 people that obviously are the kind of the main characters. Well, they're not even characters, they're real people. The 2 main people, of course, are Michael Peterson and David Rudolph, his lawyer, his defense attorney. And I really liked watching, the 3rd time especially, just listening to how this David Rudolph would try and punch holes in the prosecution's arguments. And it was just, he doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't get emotional, except every now and then there would be some funny smirking going on in the court case revolving around Michael Peterson's proclivities, But and there were some embarrassing moments, but they kind of turned them into lighthearted moments, like, yeah, what are you going to do, kind of thing. The guy's this is the way he is. But just watching how, in a very calm, methodical, logical, precise way of, questioning, the prosecution's arguments. Now, to this day, the other thing about Michael Peterson is he's always smoking a pipe in the first, probably the first 7 episodes, because he's at home and he's on house arrest and whatever. So every time I've been watching him smoke a pipe, I've been kind of like, well, he makes pipe smoking look kind of good. So, and but just watching the ability of somebody to have a very intense, opposition and a classical argument with another person who's clearly opposed to your position, and yet to be able to, in a very methodical, even congenial way, kind of really question, and bring to light things that were assumed in the beginning of that trial. Now, materially, again, a lot of this stuff has been since altered a little bit. There's been some new evidence, and there have been some other things that were brought out about the whole trial, and that's why the guy got a retrial. But he eventually pled guilty as an offered plea, and so he's probably 82 now. Anyway, but you could see what prison he was in prison for 8 years, and a guy who worked in a prison for almost 10 years. I didn't live there, thanks be to God, but I saw how it. In some ways, I don't know. That's kind of a strange thing, again, about inmates. It's a highly stressful environment, I'm sure, for them to live there. But they figure it out. Either you figure it out or you go nuts or you get killed. You die there. But for some reason, some of those inmates, they didn't seem to age the way real people do. I don't know. I guess having a family and having a mortgage and all that stuff ages you real fast. But those inmates, because all they have to worry about is their next appeal. And I'm sure that's very nerve-wracking. I would not want to be in prison, let me tell you. And I have respect for, even though the people that got there probably put themselves there. The bottom line is that I don't know if I could do time. I don't think I could do it. And I've had a couple of my friends. I had one friend, one time he said, "My biggest fear is going to prison." I thought, why would you be afraid of going to prison? I guess he watched too many prison movies when he was growing up. I don't know. Birdman of Alcatraz and all that stuff. I don't know. But anyway, so you watch Michael Peterson go through this ordeal. I think it's like close to like 17 years. The whole shooting match, I think, when it's said to start to finish, soup to nuts kind of a thing. And, it aged him pretty good. Even David Rudolph, you see at the very last episode, he's not quite the ebullient younger attorney that he was. I mean, he still was able. He still has. Still was able to certainly mount arguments and do his job. But it's got to take a lot out of you. But to me, and like I said, I don't know everything about this case. Only what I've read and looked at on TV. But the thing was that the arguments that the prosecution opened with, they were pretty much proven that they were non-issues. The weapon in question turned out to be. They said, "Oh, it was this." They even said in their open arguments that it was speculative, that it was this metal thing called a blowpoke, which you use to get your fire in your fireplace. You can blow through it and blow air into the embers and get them going again. And it has a little poke thing at the end, or you can move the embers around and that kind of thing. So, but they speculated that it was something like that. It was either that instrument or something like it that caused the wounds. Then later, another guy came up with this it almost sounded very fantastical, but the more you looked at the evidence, it almost seemed like, I think the guy got it. The neighbor was into, I guess he was a ornithologist. He studied birds, and I guess they had barn owls that mated during this time period, and when the lady was probably outside rearranging some Christmas decorations, and it was underneath this tree where the barn owls were nesting, and they perceived her as a threat, and they attacked her, and they with their claws, their talons, they ripped her skull, ripped her scalp. And when you look at the wounds, to me it doesn't look like it's a blunt force instrument. It looked like it was something that tore her scalp, lacerated her scalp. And then they found appearance of bird feathers or owl feathers, little microscopic or little teeny tiny ones, in her hair. It was very fascinating. And so, but I'm just saying that the material evidence to tie him to the murder of the wife, even though he was in the home at the time, there really wasn't anything tying him to the actual deed. So, a reasonable doubt was established, and I think that. Now, I think the problem with Michael Peterson was that he had engendered a lot of animosity because he used to write a column for the Durham newspaper, and he was always attacking the DA. Not maybe his opinion, and probably didn't turned out to be not a good thing in his future. And the city police and the city council and everything, saying you guys are a bunch of bozos and you're not really doing your job, and he was really critical. So he didn't have a lot of friends down at City Hall. Let's put it that way. And he kind of comes across as, in some ways he's an interesting character. I would say he's a likable character. He's the kind of person you either like or you really don't like. There's no middle ground with Michael Peterson. You're really going to like him or you're really going to dislike him. And he kind of comes across in his own way, kind of smug and a little arrogant. And but he's always smoking his pipe in the first 7 episodes, listening to classical music and everything. And he kind of pipe-tificates, and gets very philosophic, and he gets very oh, he gets indignant about certain political things, and he kind of gets on a soapbox. And anyway, you can see how he's either going to be really liked or really loathed, kind of like me. But he just has his own way of presenting himself. And the other thing was that he apparently was a bisexual person. And for some people, that was a bridge too far. And so they wanted to say, well, he's just this dirty, rotten guy. And so, of course, he did it, But again, you got to look at things from the forensic evidence. And there was just nothing there, other than the fact that he was in the house. He did make the 911 call, and his wife pretty much died in his arms. Now whether he did kill her, with his bare hands, there's hardly any evidence to support that. Now you say, yeah, there's a dead body. Well, yeah, that's true, but there's nothing that forensically ties him with the murder, if it's a murder. Again. Then years later, they found this owl theory, and it seemed to hold because they found microscopic feathers and other things and other interesting little blood patterns that were outside the house. It's like, well, how do you explain this blood outside the house when the accident happened in the staircase? How because he didn't drag the body outside, or nobody did that. I mean, Anyway, all I'm trying to say, I guess, is. Looking at my past and seeing where if I had been more like, more like a kind of instead of getting so passionate about things and, or just being so kind of feel like I'm always on the defensive about, why are you attacking me? Why is my, theology in question? After all, it's the theology that's in the catechism. And yet there's always been an element in the church that wants to be progressive. They want to disassociate themselves from the traditions, the teachings, the doctrines, the dogmas, the catechisms, the magisterium. They just want to divorce themselves from all of that and do something new and different. It's kind of like right now we're getting ready for the WW 25, I guess, Worldwide Developer Conference, if you're into tech and Apple products and all that stuff. And and people feel that, you got to be constantly changing. You got to be updating all the time. And I got to say, after a while, going through now, 18 years of being an Apple person, that's hard to believe. And I like Apple products, as you all know. I'm making this video on my iPhone 16. But it just seems like it's now ingrained in our society that if things aren't new and improved at least every other year, not to say every year, but every other year even, well, you're stagnating. You're not moving forward. You're not being innovative, And, there are some things that, you want to probably, if you're into technology and you use it for your livelihood, if you're a pilot, you want the best avionics. If you're a doctor, you want the best medical, machines, that will be able to help you diagnose things and those types of things, things that will help you in surgery, perhaps, things that are, are revolutionary, advanced things that will maybe do certain procedures that you couldn't have done, say, 5-10 years ago. Yeah, we want that. But I don't know if we always have to be constantly updating the phones and the iPads and the computers, and I think that we kind of fell into the trap, like the car manufacturers. They know that they've got to be selling next year's model today. Not next year, not 2026, but now 2025. This is the time you start selling the 2026s. It's just we're a slave to style and fashion, and a lot of it's so superficial. You look back and you say, well, There's not really, there's not a whole lot of change other than, they can maybe do more. The computers and the tablets and the phones can do more. They can do more sophisticated things, to be sure. Apple came out with some really cool new features for Final Cut Pro. I'm making this now, just the basic video, but I'm probably going to employ some of those special features in a minute when I go back and edit the video, and to maybe put things like text behind me or pictures behind me, or zoom in and zoom out, and do color grading and all that kind of stuff. It makes the videos hopefully a little bit more interesting, entertaining maybe, but basically you could do a lot of that stuff. Obviously I was doing this stuff for the last almost 18 years on a Windows machine, Windows Movie Maker. Anybody remember that? Windows Movie Maker? Anyway, things get more sophisticated and they can do more things, but by and large, you're still doing the same task. I'm still making a video. I just have a little more tools to make it a little bit more interesting and creative, but that's about it. So, do you need, to go out and buy every year the newest and latest and greatest? Well, not really. So anyway, I'm just saying, but when it comes to the theology, that we've kind of bought into that same model, that mindset. Well, we got to update the theology. We got to move forward. We got to be progressive. We got to be innovative, And theology is not like that. It's just the opposite. It's not innovative. It's not progressive. It's apostolic. It's traditional. Some people say it's medieval. If some people think it's a bad word, I think it's a good word. But anyway, so yeah, I don't know what is going to happen. There's a lot of things that are, again, continuing to brew in the church over tradition and the Latin Mass. Pope Leo apparently has no problem with the Latin Mass. Now there's two versions. There's the traditional, the Tridentine Rite, and then there's the Novus Ordo Latin Mass. And there's a bishop in Charlotte, North Carolina, I guess, who's just declared war, basically, and said, we're shutting it all down. No more Latin anywhere, No more altar rails, no more singing Latin, no more women wearing chapel veils, all the traditional things. You can't do that. You can't say the St. Michael prayer. I wouldn't be surprised if he says we got to get rid of that Our Father because it's gender specific. We got to have more gender inclusion. Our parent who art in heaven. Actually, you can't say that because art's a guy. So there you go. When you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. So, and the problem is that the reason why I think they want to. Some people, not every. No, most people. I would say, okay, yeah, you got people that consider themselves traditionalists. I've for years considered myself a traditionalist. I consider myself now an Orthodox Christian. But I have no problems with tradition. Tradition's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. But the reason why I think the progressives don't like tradition is because it's something that's codified. It's like the Constitution. It's the standard. It's the baseline. It's the bedrock of everything. And but if you want to believe that the new iPhone can change every year, and the new computers can change every year, and the cars can change every year, well, why not the theology, And the people that don't like the tradition and they are trying to stamp it out is because they know that as long as there is the tradition, they can't have things like gay marriage in the church. They can't have women priests and deacons. They can't have abortion, they can't have contraception, because those are things that are immutable in the Catholic Church as it now stands. Now, you might say, well, a lot of people don't abide by those teachings anymore. Well, I think a lot of people do. Maybe they struggle to. Maybe they don't always. Maybe they've had parts of their life. A lot of people who are Catholic it's kind of funny. They kind of have the, was it Rumspringa, in the in the Amish tradition, the kind of like they give the kids, I guess, a summer to kind of go sow their wild oats, kind of. Not really. I mean, that's probably a very crass way of looking at it, but it's kind of like, well, you get to make up your own mind now. So you either want to be a part of our community or not, but you need maybe go out in the world a little bit, maybe get a job and work a secular job for a season or two and see what that's like. And then, and they hope that maybe they'll say, well, deep down inside, I might have more conveniences, more modern conveniences, but I don't have my community that I came from. What's more important, the community or the conveniences? And but a lot of young Catholics, they kind of wander away from the faith, and then when they finally kind of come to their senses, maybe in their late 20s, 30s, they get married and they realize, well, wait a minute, now I'm a mother. I'm going to be a father. I'm going to be a mother. I'm going to have a family, and I got to support this family, not just financially, but I also have to do something that's going to hopefully make these young little kids into good people, not just freeloaders, Democrats. Okay. Anyway, so, oh my goodness. So, anyway, that's kind of what I've been thinking the last few days, few weeks. If that any of that makes any sense to you, I don't know. It's kind of funny. I for a guy who didn't have the best start in life, and somebody who, I wouldn't say I don't think I was ever a quitter or somebody who gave up easily or didn't have ambition. I think I've always had ambition. Whether my ambition was set too low or maybe too high, I don't know. But I mean, but to see something to its end, to stay the course. And you do that by just showing up one day at a time. That's all. That's my secret. Because there was a time there I just thought, well, I'm just not really going to amount to much, And not to say that I have amounted to much, but I have been consistent and I've stuck with something for 33 years. I'm delighted to see that I look back and I say, well, I made a commitment and I've kind of stuck with it. Doesn't mean I'm perfect. Oh boy, I'm not perfect. I'm Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me, a sinner. Let me tell you. But at the same time, again, it's if I had thought about this probably 40 years ago almost in the seminary, and knowing what I was going to go through, not so much what I went through, I would still do that. It's kind of like what's happened with the church, with the sex abuse scandal, the abuse that has happened in the last 12 years, and we're still seeing that being played out in some places, like Charlotte, North Carolina. It's sad that there's some people in the church that really don't like Roman Catholicism, and I'm sorry they feel that way. I wish that they could be a little bit more faithful to the teachings of the church and not try to change them. Try to update them like an iPhone every year. But I don't know. And like I said, I've had so many rancorous encounters and exchanges with other priests who have literally yelled and screamed at me, and I've yelled and screamed at them too. Primarily when they would do it to me, when they would just get in my face and you trying to bring back the Latin Mass? Why are you trying to take us back? People don't do that anymore. And I just say, well, maybe you don't, but there are people that I know that love the Latin Mass, and they do. So if you don't want to go and you don't want to participate, no one's forcing you. But why attack other people because they might have a slightly different view? And again, I think it's because they know that as long as there's going to be, a very regimented, not rigid, but regimented and codified and catechized teaching, a foundational teaching that it's immutable and you can't deviate from it, you can't change it, They find that very threatening because they have an agenda. They want to bring in all these new age ideas, these new woke ideas, and it was like, maybe it was like, this big theological fever that we all had, and it finally kind of broke, I think, about a month ago. And I think we're kind of returning, hopefully, to a little bit of sanity and clarity and stability back in the church. I mean, there were times they wake up every day and there'd be some new statement by the former guy, and like, I guess you can baptize aliens now. Now, I don't mean illegal aliens. I mean like aliens from outer space. I think there was one, again, I'd have to find it, but I think there was, the former guy actually said that you could actually, if we discovered aliens, you could baptize them. Just like, okay. Why are we talking about this? I mean, did he get a tour of Area 51 and he saw something that we didn't? I don't know. But these bizarre statements, Anyway, so anyway, that's my little ramblings for this little pipe video for what is it? June 5th. June 5th. Hold on a second. Here, let me get the old pipe going. Delicious. Okay. So thanks for hanging out with the old Padre tonight. Appreciate that. And leave me a comment. I like your comments. And so I guess we'll see you all in the next one. So thanks for watching and hanging with the old Padre once again. Have a pleasant evening or a pleasant morning, pleasant afternoon, or whatever you're doing, wherever you're doing it. We'll see you in the next one. Take care. And, light up your world, light up your pipe, and enjoy. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.